Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome to What If Deku Had Returned by Death. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel. After watching this video, don't forget to shower some appreciation onto the incredible author responsible for this fanfiction. The link is conveniently waiting for you in the description down below. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Wait! Izuku gasped, throwing his head back with a flinch. His wrist stung as he pulled his arms instinctively to shield his face. He pried his eyelids open, meeting an amused Shigaraki. The villain chuckled. "Good morning, hero," he said. "Had a nice nap?" Izuku panted vigorously, eyes round as he stared at the man. He was running out of ideas, and with heavy trepidation he said, "I know what you're going to do. You're going to torture me to death." The villain's eyes crinkled into slits with mirth. "Look, the hero knows what's coming." His giggles joined the blonde girl, who was practically bouncing in her seat on the bar counter. "Toga Himiko," she'd said, pressing the blade into his cheek. "Please say my name before you die, okay? Ah, he's so scared. Like a baby bunny. It's so cute." She practically sang her words, juggling the open box cutter in one hand, the sharp steel glinting in the low light as it pirouetted through the air, before she caught it by the handle with ease and started the process over again. "Come on, Shiggy, let me have just one stab at him, please." "No," Shigaraki snarled. "This brat's mine. I let you have your fun back at the camp, now it's my turn." The girl pouted, sticking her tongue out at her boss when he wasn't looking. Izuku paid close attention to it all, every word, every action, everything. A plan was stringing itself together in his head. It wasn't a good plan, it was desperate, a last resort from being pushed into a corner with no other way out, but it was a chance. "I want to get out of here. Out OUT. I don't care anymore." "I know more than that, Shigaraki." That caught the villain's attention. He raised a wispy brow. "Oh?" he challenged, doubting. "Please enlighten me. I know you want Kak, Bakugo and Tokoyami to join you as subordinates." He glanced at his classmates. The man with the mask, Mr. Compress, managed to look smug despite his covered face, standing between the two teens, hands ready to strike. Bakugo scowled at Izuku, but it was more puzzled than cross. "You saw how Bakugo acted in the sports festival and decided he would make a good villain. Tokoyami was just a bonus." "Who?" Shigaraki cocked his head. "Did you figure that out yourself, or did someone tell you?" "There's more." Izuku ignored the question, swallowing. "I could tell you how much Toga wants to stab me right now, but you already know that. Spinner doesn't like the idea of killing me, especially not through torture, because of my association with Stain, but he won't stop you. These restraints aren't meant to hold me. Just give Mr. Compress enough time to kill Tokoyami in case I don't behave. He won't touch Bakugo unless he has to, and he'll only kill him as a last resort. If that isn't enough to stop me, Mustard will use his quirk to force me into unconsciousness. Not every villain is in this room right now. You have more waiting further inside. One of them uses fire, the other can create clones. Not to mention the Numus. The reason you kidnapped me is because you want revenge for them all." Shigaraki looked like he couldn't settle between feeling intrigued or disturbed, but from the way his fingers twitched, Izuku knew he wasn't sold yet. He could practically smell the man's bloodlust from here. "One more thing," Izuku said. His tongue felt heavy, and his throat itched. "I know what you're going to say next." The sickly-looking man stilled. He almost sounded excited when he asked, "And what is that?" Izuku worked his jaw. His lips parted. Closed. "I don't know yet. But I will." And he would. "And then you'll listen to me." And he would. "What are you thinking, kid? This is insanity. You can't let them know. What do you expect me to do? This is the only option I have left. It's not like I want them to know my secret. But I can't keep this up for much longer." The shadow, could you call it that when it was so bright, walked up to him. Izuku could make out more details now than in their previous meetings. Something that could be goggles outlines the man's bald head, a heavy jacket hung over his shoulders and a bumpy belt strapped over his torso. He took hold of Izuku's hands, squeezing the fingers tight. That was new. He didn't have hands last time he was here. The limbs cut off a bit after his wrists, reducing to black plumes of smoke outlined by a bright white, floating in the void. Here. Your body still hasn't acclimated to One for All completely. But I can't stand watching this any longer. None of us can. I'm giving you my power. Power? Izuku almost pulled back in shock. What power? What are you talking about? My quirk. The man held Izuku in place as the boy tried to pull away. He felt a strange vibration inside him, leading right into the very core of his soul. I call it Black Whip. It's a grade A quirk, so you better put it to good use. Just call on it and well, I hope you're ready. What's that supposed to mean? Izuku demanded. The man still refused to let him go. Ready for what? What the hell did you just give me? Another quirk? No, I can't believe. Who the hell are you? Realization struck him. You're a previous holder of One for All, aren't you? Then, the man clutched his hands. Don't forget, he said. Remember what I just gave you. Don't forget, he repeated, over and over, crushing Izuku's fingers between his own. His eyes were a pure white, but Izuku still felt the pupils boring into him. Don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. Wakey, wakey, hero. Izuku was slow to open his eyes. Don't forget, he murmured. He tried to stretch his muscles. Something was different. He couldn't put his finger on what, but he knew something had changed. A spark ran through him and he stiffened, but it was gone before he could identify it. Don't forget? Shigaraki copied his words. Don't forget what? Izuku blinked the blurriness out of his eyes. It took a moment before Shigaraki's words registered with him, and another moment before he understood their meaning. I'm not sure, he admitted, fighting to recall where he'd heard those words before. Something important, something, he was mumbling. Shigaraki raised his hand, and the back of his palm struck Izuku's cheek hard enough that he tasted metal. Don't care, the man said, a complete reversal of his previous position. I won't have you distracted for what's to come. Izuku's fingers moved. They jerked as if struck, stirring without his input. Like static electricity, the same spark from earlier, seizing his muscles from the tips of his fingers up to his shoulders. It didn't hurt, but it needled his nerves, like a limb waking up after falling asleep. His thoughts divided into two, one side telling him to remember, buzzing incessantly, a voice that didn't belong to him stuck on autopilot, telling him the same thing over and over. Use it! It was a distraction, and he tried to ignore it, concentrating on his original plan. He leaned back in his seat, ignoring how uncomfortable the metal chair felt digging into his back. Don't mind me, he told Shigaraki. Please, do your thing. Shigaraki's eye twitched. You look smug now, the villain said. Let's see how long that lasts. How am I supposed to use a quirk when I can't even remember I have it? What does it even do? And why do I keep forgetting these conversations? It's like I said before. You still haven't fully grown into One for All, and your connection with the previous holders of your quirk is still weak. Even just these short conversations takes a great effort. How do I fix that? Time. And I'm not just talking about your mind. That's part of it, sure, but your body needs time too. These resets, as you call them, can help you with that. Unfortunately. So, in short, there's nothing I can do but just hope for the best. Yes, great. The man sat down next to him, crossing his legs and leaning on one elbow against a raised knee. Izuku's body followed him down, and the man slapped his free hand over Izuku's back. He felt the impact, but it didn't hurt. Hey, don't look so down, kid. I said there's nothing you can do, but I'm still going to try my hardest. You're not alone. Got it? It was a good thing Izuku didn't have a head, or he'd probably be tearing up. I don't want to go back. You're not alone, the ghost repeated. We're all looking out for you, cheering you on. You're going to get out of this. Promise. It was all too soon when the man faded into nothing. Wakey, wakey, hero, he said before his eyes cracked open. When he did, it was to see Shigaraki's nonplussed expression. That's what you were going to say, right? Shigaraki's gaze sharpened. Before he could speak, Izuku interjected. How did you know that? Izuku turned his voice as raspy as possible, moving his lips faster than Shigaraki had time to protest. Stop it. You're not funny. Stop. What the fuck's your deal, you creepy motherfucker? Your quirk's supposed to be enhancer related, not precognition. Hey Kurogiri, what the fuck is this? Izuku paused for dramatic tension. And now, realizing I will just speak your every thought before you even have the chance to think them, you're going to stay quiet. Only for a bit though. You can't hold your tongue for long. Don't worry, I'll let you speak this time. Shigaraki chewed on his lips, tearing up old and new wounds on the dry skin. His fingers trembled. Toga leaned forward, chin in her hands, elbows on her knees. The knife in her grip almost touched her cheek, and her eyes sparkled with intrigue. Oh, this is fun! I've never met anyone with precognition before. Izuku's throat hurt from the high pitch he forced it into. He blurted the most god-awful giggle he could manage. It's so creepy! I love it! Shigaraki whipped his head in the girl's direction. Shut up! Shigaraki's jaw tensed, and he glared at Izuku. The boy shrugged, blinking innocently. Oops, sorry. I forgot. Didn't mean to steal your spotlight. My bad. The villain stalked up to him, grabbing the lapel of his shirt. Anyone could have guessed that. You're not special. Izuku could have laughed at Shigaraki's indignant expression, but that was likely to get him killed. And now you're going to slap your hand over my MPH. Shigaraki clicked his tongue. His thumb hovered less than a centimeter away from Izuku's skin, a warning, the dry palm pressing flat over his victim's lips. What's this kid's deal? He looked accusingly over at the other villains. Explain what's happening, now! Spinner jumped from his seat, backing away slightly, waving his hands up and down to calm his boss down. Hey, I swear he wasn't doing any of this when we fought him. He was just quick and strong. That's it. Magna took a deep swig of her drink. Like Spinner said, then what the fuck? Shigaraki tore his hand off. He jabbed a nail into Izuku's forehead. Don't you say a fucking thing. Just tell me what your goddamn deal is. You want me to explain myself without talking? Izuku questioned. Shigaraki's finger lowered until it was poking the skin between the boy's eyebrows, and Izuku decided that antagonizing the man further was a poor idea. I don't have precognition. My quirk is just as you said. That much is true. But, Izuku held his tongue. Shigaraki leaned forward, waiting impatiently for his answer. Maybe I'll keep that secret to myself. You're just gonna kill me anyways, aren't you? Why should I tell you anything? Compress. Shigaraki's eyes narrowed in the masked man's direction. Mr. Compress tightened his fingers over Tokoyami's head. Don't. Izuku bit out. You do that and I won't tell you shit. I'm serious. Look in my eyes if you don't believe me. Shigaraki pulled on his curls, dragging his captive's head up and squishing the freckled cheeks, forcing Izuku to scowl up at the man. The boy set his eyes, making them as hard and cold as steel, not giving an inch. He meant what he said. If any of these villains hurt his classmates, he'd reset. There was no way he'd give them what they wanted. TCH. You really mean it, huh? Freak. Shigaraki dissolved the patch of skin in the space between Izuku's chin and cheek, but Izuku refused to let his gaze waver. The man let him go with a shove, and Izuku's chin dropped to his chest, resting against the nook of his collarbones. This is bullshit. Let me think. The man paced back and forth, before turning around and leaving through a side door at the end of the bar, disappearing into the rest of the villain compound. Izuku held his breath. Had he convinced Shigaraki to let him leave? At least long enough until the villain figured out what Izuku's trick was? Did he finally break the loop? Izuku tried to stay calm. He knew the fallout of his actions could be disastrous. Even if he escaped from here, he doubted the villains would be content to leave him alone. And now, their motivations would be more than simple revenge. They would have a purpose that didn't previously exist, a drive to pull him apart and spill all the secrets he kept locked up deep inside. But what else could he do? He peered over at Bakugo. The other teen's expression was screwed up in constipation, red eyes glued on Izuku. You could practically see the gears turning from here, and the blonde's eyebrows drew low on his face in scrutiny, like he was stuck looking at a very complicated puzzle. His pupils sharpened, trying to communicate to Izuku with his eyes alone. Unfortunately, Izuku wasn't sure what he wanted to say. I have some questions for you later, nerd. Perhaps? You better answer or I will kill you. The wait for Shigaraki's return was awkward. An understatement maybe, but true enough. The villains didn't talk much, content to cast him the occasional glance before returning to their own devices. Toga was the only one carrying something akin to conversation, though calling it conversation was generous. It was more of a monologue, prattling on about all the ways she'd like to kill Izuku and everyone else in this room, how exciting everything was, and did Izuku like the cute bunny sticker on her phone. It looked just like him. It was almost a relief when Shigaraki reappeared. Izuku's nose twitched as the shallow wound on his face itched, and he really wished he could pull free to scratch it. The constant tickling was worse than the pain, in a sense. Pain was easier to ignore. Shigaraki towered over him. He was positively fuming when he said, "We're going to keep him alive." "Oh, does that mean I can stab him?" "Just a little bit. Promise I won't kill him." Toga bounced on her feet, waving the box cutter in Shigaraki's face. The man ignored her, turning to the misty man behind the bar. "Kurogiri, prepare a room we can keep him in that his quirk won't be able to break him out of. I want one of you losers to guard him, too. Make sure the slippery brat doesn't have a chance of escape. If he slithers free, I'll kill whoever's responsible. I don't care who, of course." Kurogiri nodded, or performed the smoky equivalent of what Izuku assumed to be a nod. "And the other two? Keep them here. I want to talk to them without this." Shigaraki gestured at Izuku. "One present. He's just gonna mess up my vibes." Kurogiri put down the glass he was cleaning, had been cleaning ever since Izuku first woke up, on the counter, along with the rag he used to wipe it down. He disappeared in a wispy spiral of black fog, before returning moments later. "I found a sufficiently reinforced room that should be able to hold the boy, and I have instructed Dabi to stand guard, along with one of our Numis. He didn't appear too pleased about the order, but he will follow. He better," Shigaraki muttered. "Well, get on with it." A black and purple portal opened under Izuku's feet, circular and large enough to take both boy and the chair he was sitting on with it. It landed with a thud on concrete floor, falling over to its side. Izuku cringed as his shoulder bumped against the hard surface. He used One for All to pry himself free, Kurogiri's floating head watching him. "Remember, we still have your friends in our possession. From your earlier words, you are perfectly aware what will happen to them should you attempt to escape, correct? Pretty fucking good idea." Izuku spat on the floor. Kurogiri's expression didn't change. "Excellent. Then you will cooperate." With that last goodbye, he was gone. Izuku took the chance to observe his new surroundings. Thick concrete walls, floor and ceiling. A grated drain in the corner, too small to fit through. A strange odor was wafting through it, one Izuku didn't spend too long considering its origins. There was a door to the left of him, heavy-looking and made of what he assumed to be reinforced steel. He wondered how sturdy his cage was, and decided to test it by stepping up to one of the walls. He punched it, and it split into cracks. He pulled a sharp and loosened slab out, several smaller ones falling free with it, finding a barricade of metal hiding beneath. He tisked. He wasn't sure he was strong enough to break through this, at least not without breaking himself in the process. His knuckles already smarted just from the impact against the concrete. There was a knock on the door. Without waiting for a reply, a voice called out. It sounded tired. "Hey, whatever you're doing in there, knock it off. I'm not paid enough to come in there and turn you into a crisp." "Dabi, fire fuck," Izuku said. The door was silent for a bit, before the voice spoke again. I was wondering what happened to him." "So, you ran into Muscular, did you? Since you're here and he's not, you managed to take him out, huh? Pretty impressive. Too bad you still lost in the end." "I also ran into a clone of yours," Izuku said, for no other reason but to put the villain off kilter. Or maybe it was a much simpler motivation than that, and Izuku just wanted to piss Dabi off. "You lost, by the way. You sure you can keep me in here?" Dabi was quiet. He hummed, but didn't say anything else. Izuku sat on his haunches, taking this moment to compose himself. He closed his eyes, breathing through his nose loudly. "All right. I'm still alive," he thought. "Now what the hell do I do?" Izuku sat hunched on the floor, knees drawn close, counting the bolts in the door. A way to pass the time, as he thought, or to build up courage, rather, a test. Unpleasant, but the sooner he had his answer, the better. He counted the bolts again. By the time he ran out, he stood up and walked to the door. He aimed at the hinges with the full force of One for All, and it blasted the thing hard enough to make a dent on the opposite wall. It also broke his arm in the process, predictably. Before he had the chance to step through, everything turned blue. The flames turned him to ash in less than a second. Reset. The smell hit him before his vision could clear. It was the same unpleasant odor from before, wafting up from the piping system connected to the room. "Back in my cell," It's what he'd suspected, and he was relieved to not be back in the chair. It felt like progress. That didn't erase the fear that he'd irrevocably fucked up his chances and doomed Tokoimi and Bakugo to a terrible fate. But he tried fighting his way through the roomful of villains enough times to know there was no avenue there that would bring all of them through alive and safe. In any case, waking up in the cell rather than the chair meant he was free to experiment breaking out of here without having to talk Shigaraki into letting him live each time. Small mercies. If he had to torture his vocal cords by mimicking one more villain, he would really lose it. From his last attempt punching the door off the frame, he knew it was, at least in theory, possible for him to escape from here. Now, whether it was possible to do so without pulverizing his bones or burning to death in the process was another matter entirely. He counted the bolts. Then he walked up to the door. I really wish I had some way to journal all of this, he thought as he raised his fist. 90%, one for all. Izuku counted down the mental list he'd made. 4 times he died in here. The first 3 had been through Dabi's flames. The last was the Numu, when Izuku had managed to talk Dabi into standing in front of the door before he punched it across the hallway. He'd taken 1 step outside, which was a marginal improvement, before a chainsaw promptly decapitated him. The noise of metal chewing through bones still grinded his eardrums, even now. He counted the bolts. What should I do? Do I really have to sacrifice an arm to get out of here? Normally, that wouldn't be a huge deal, but he still had more villains to fight after this, and classmates to rescue. He needed all the firepower he could get. But the only way to get through the door in one hit was to use enough power to break him, and if he used less power but more punches, Dabi would kill him before he could finish. He cursed himself. If only I had more, he thought, biting the nail of his thumb. More control of this quirk of mine, more power, more. He reeled his head back as he felt his fingertips buzz. Surprised, he peered down at them. For just a second, he saw it. Black energy sparkled between his fingers. A name popped into existence, a memory he'd forgotten he was looking for. Black Whip. He flexed his fingers, but nothing happened. He concentrated, trying to bring that power back. I remember now, he thought. Well, sort of. It's still foggy, but I remember. I was talking to someone. This is his power. A previous holder of One for All. The memory felt like it was running away from him, and he tried his hardest to draw that spark of power back before it escaped him entirely. Ouch! He closed his eyes, just as something whipped over his nose and eyelid. He opened them again, observing his hands with fascination as an ink-black power like electricity danced between his fingertips intermittently. He moved them slightly to experiment, and one zigzagging whip hit the floor, while another left an angry red mark over his wrist, before the quirk fizzled out completely. Damn! He muttered. But through his disappointment was a bigger excitement. This was a chance. Hope. He ignored thoughts of escape, Dabi, the villains, his classmates, putting his entire focus on bringing Black Whip back and taking control. He didn't know what this quirk was, what it did, but from the marks left on his skin and the name, he could guess. Will this be useful for me? He wondered as his pupils narrowed in hard concentration. He dismissed the thought quickly. Even if he didn't have an idea of how to use it yet, more power meant more opportunity. Whether that was now or in an unprecedented situation later. I have time, he reminded himself. 1 quirk, 2 quirks, 3 or 4. I'll take everything I can get. Counting the bolts, he stood up and walked to the door. Hey, Dabi, he called out. His fingers twitched as he forced Black Whip through. It took a few tries to get it working, but he was starting to get the hang of it. It was very much like learning how to control a new limb, or several. Using it was even harder. Dabi was silent, not reacting to his calls. Typical. The villain didn't respond well to taunts, being a lot harder to rile up than someone like Muscular or Shigaraki. Annoying, but Izuku knew how to get him in the position he wanted. I'm bored, he said, tapping the door with his foot. Tell me a joke. Silence. What do you use this room for anyways? He continued their one-sided conversation, looking at his surroundings. And what's that smell? Quiet. Dabi cut in. You talk too much. What else am I supposed to do? Izuku injected his voice with a nasally whine, trying to sound as grating as possible. How long am I going to stay here? What's your plan? I'm hungry. Dabi shifted on the other side, no doubt growing peeved with the constant chattering. Don't know, don't care. he replied. Now shut up. Izuku stayed quiet for approximately 30 seconds, just enough time for Dabi to relax his guard and think the conversation had drawn to a close. He listened to the small sigh through the cracks in the door, and pounced. What happens if I need to use the bathroom? He asked, mock innocence. Don't tell me I have to use the grate. Gross. At least throw me some toilet paper. Dabi pushed off of the wall he was presumably leaning on, changing to stand in front of the door. The metal slot covering the peephole shifted, and it screeched as Dabi pulled it open. His electric blues glared at him sharply, ready to threaten him with bodily harm if he didn't shut his damn mouth already. Izuku punched the door, obliterating it, Dabi, and his arm with one swift action. He jumped back, waiting for the Numa to react. It bent down in front of the door, slow as it tried to squeeze its hulking frame through the not quite big enough opening. One arm turned into a chainsaw, trying to saw through the surrounding material uselessly. The other shifted into a nail gun, aiming for Izuku's curly head. Before it could fire, the boy used his working arm to shoot out ink ropes that snaked through the air before latching onto the monstrously thick arm. He pulled, but the Numa didn't budge. The monster, confused, pulled its arm back to curiously observe the whip snagging onto its wrist. Izuku stumbled, before combining One for All with Black Whip and tried to gain as much traction as he could on the floor with his shoes, before pulling. It didn't do much, and he slipped and fell on his face. Still, Black Whip held on strong, staying intact until he manually deactivated it and let the Numa go. He scrabbled to his knees to use it again, aiming for the still-running chainsaw this time. He missed the first time, hitting the wall instead, and a nail pierced his shoulder, controlling his good arm. He grit his teeth, pushed through the pain, and tried again. Black Whip wound itself around the spinning blades of the saw, stopping it in its tracks. The black ropes held on strong. It's durable, he noted, tugging it tentatively. And once I learn to control it, I'm sure its movements will be quite versatile. This wasn't an escape attempt. He wanted to test the effectiveness of Black Whip on a real target before he practiced fine-tuning his control over it. Knowing how much abuse it could take would help in making future plans. Black Whip short-circuited as Izuku's concentration faltered. Izuku wouldn't call his ability to use One for All innate, or even good, but it was still leagues ahead of Black Whip, it seemed. The Numa turned its body, finally figuring out how to move to squeeze itself through the gap of the door. It ducked low, before lunging at Izuku. The nail gun turned to a sharp point, and he stabbed the ice pick through Izuku's torso. The boy allowed it to happen. When the creature raised the arm with the whirring chainsaw, Izuku closed his eyes. The spinning blades ate through his skull quickly, but stalled as bone and flesh got caught in the mechanism. It didn't matter. The blood loss turned Izuku's vision black in seconds, and the reset happened before he knew it. Izuku woke up. He still remembered his newfound power, and wasted no time in working on it, flexing his fingers and poking at that unknown point inside him that called the black energy forth. It felt more sluggish than it did before his reset, and he deduced that his death put him back a step or two in his quirk's development. He's reasonably sure the vestige in his dreams mentioned something like that. Something about how using his quirks wasn't just a matter of mind power, but also his body growing used to it. Any progress his body gained would be lost when he died, returned to the point it was at his last checkpoint. Bothersome, but he'd just have to focus on what he could improve. He ignored the smell from the grate, the bolts in the door, the wheezing breath of the Numa that could be heard if you strained your ears. He trained his command of Black Whip as well as he could. Aiming, stretching, making the tendrils thicker and thinner, using one whip, using two or three or even more. It was easier to focus on one part at a time. The more processes he combined, the wilder his control became. At points, Black Whip would turn off without warning. Other times it would explode in an untamable burst of energy, whipping and pulling at his face and body and the surroundings as if it had a mind of its own. Dabi had pulled the slot of the peephole back to see what he was up to after a particularly strong burst, and it was just in time that Izuku calmed the quirk down, hiding the still slightly sparkling hand in his lap and behind his legs, face turned down to hide the red marks marring it. "Don't do anything stupid," Dabi warned simply, before pulling the slot back in place with a screech, and then presumably returning to rest against the wall. Izuku raised his head. A small trickle of blood ran down his cheek, a result of Black Whip ripping open the spot where Shigaraki previously decayed a small patch of skin. He waited a moment before turning back to his training. He wished he'd kept track of time. Not that he had a convenient way to do so other than counting the seconds in his head, because he heard a voice at the other side of the door that didn't belong to Dabi. Change. Something useful? Hey, Dabi dude. The voice had a rough quality to it, almost sounding as if it was forced into a pitch lower than what was natural. A farce to sound more intimidating than he truly was. Izuku took a second to place it. How's it going, Spinner? Dabi returned, sounding less than enthused to talk to the lizard man. What do you want? You look bored, Spinner said. By the loudness of his voice, he must be standing just outside the door. Kid isn't causing any trouble, is he? Dabi didn't answer the question verbally, but he must have made some gesture before he said, Get to the point, Spinner. Why are you here? Let's switch. I can watch the kid for a while. How about it? Does Shigaraki know about this? Do you think he'll mind? Probably. There was a beat. But fine. Knock yourself out. I need to take a piss anyways. Izuku listened as Dabi's footfalls grew more reticent as they turned down the corridor. When he was gone, a knock sounded at the door. Hey, you in there, kid? You awake? Izuku weighed the merits of ignoring the villain versus answering him. With a sigh, he said, Yup. Feeling just peachy. The slot in the door opened. Izuku looked down at his lap, letting his hair fall forward to cover his face. This might be a bit weird, Spinner said, but I'm sorta a fan of yours. Thought it'd be cool to meet you, so I was excited for that when Shigaraki said we would attack you, but meeting you in person, fighting you, you're not really what I imagined. I thought you'd be more heroic. Izuku couldn't help but laugh. Oh really? Well, I'll be sure to take your criticism into account, Mr. Villain. Excuse me for giving my damnedest to make sure you and your co-workers don't murder me and everyone I care about. He wished he could see Spinner's expression, but he didn't want to move his head and be forced to explain why his face was littered with bruises. That's a good point, Spinner said after some thought. You did fight hard to protect your friends. That's the type of thing Stain would praise, right? I'm tired of these Stain fans. Izuku pinched the bridge of his nose, ignoring how sore the skin was. What's your motivation? He asked. You're a fan of Stain? If that's the case, then why are you hanging out with these guys? Huh? What do you mean? Spinner sounded confused. Stain worked with the League, didn't he? I only want to follow his ideals. That means I should help the League too. You think Shigaraki gives a crap what Stain wants? Izuku shook his head. You're under the wrong impression. Shigaraki only follows his own desires. He couldn't care less about Stain. He's only using Stain's reputation for his own benefits, just like he's using you. Be honest, I don't like Stain, but I don't think he's the kind of guy that would torture kids for petty revenge. Is that how you see him? Is your hero that shallow? No. He almost sounded offended. Of course not. And yet you're content to play along with it. Izuku paused, letting his words sink in. If you want to follow Stain's ideals, then you're doing a real shit job of it. He looked up, ignoring the cuts and blemishes on his face, taking in Spinner's reaction. The man's brow turned down into a V, anger to have his loyalty put in doubt. It pulled down further, thinking. He spun on his heel, head bent forward. Give me a moment, he called out. I need to figure out if you're trying to trick me or if you're right. Let me think. Izuku waited, patient. He wasn't expecting much, but he was willing to try any avenue he could find. He didn't have anything to lose. Spinner muttered to himself. Maybe, but no. Then again. But if I did that, his one-party argument continued, and Izuku made himself comfortable as he waited for its conclusion, experimenting with Black Whip in the meantime. There was a soft smack of skin against skin, or scales, rather, as Spinner punched his fist in his palm, reaching a conclusion. He turned, and Izuku dispelled Black Whip before Spinner noticed. The man sprung forward, staring through the gap in the door intently. You're right, he exclaimed. I've suspected it for a bit, but I was holding out hope I was wrong. But Shigaraki doesn't care about Stain, does he? He's just doing his own thing, like you said. I can't accept that. He nodded, determined. But what should I do? What would Stain do in this situation? Izuku's mouth fell open, a half-formed idea. Is this something I can use? He clenched his fists. I don't like Stain, But he wasn't wrong. Not completely, he said. Spinner nodded along, hanging on to his prisoner's words. He's in prison now, but I'm still here. Someone he approved of. Not like Shigaraki. If you want to help Stain, then help me. Spinner still didn't look entirely convinced, pressing his mouth tight together, doubting. Shigaraki would kill me. Are you a coward? Izuku spat the words out. Do you think Stain approves of cowards? That got his attention. Spinner straightened up, eyes hard. I'm not a coward, he insisted. I'm the man who will see Stains will through, then do it. Izuku pushed himself to his feet, approaching the door. He punched the metal, and it rattled. Follow in Stain's footsteps, he said. And help me get this door open. I don't have the keys for the door, Spinner admitted, tapping his foot against the metal gate. Who does? Izuku cupped his mouth with his hand, murmuring. The door was already locked when I got put here. It would be annoying if there wasn't a way to unlock it, though a smart move on the villain's part, I suppose. Relying on Kurogiri's warping abilities to move prisoners around. But Shigaraki's someone who enjoys being in control. I doubt he'd be content without direct access to his victims. Question is, does he keep the keys on him, or somewhere else? Hey, I can't hear you when you speak so quietly, Spinner complained. Besides, I'm more concerned about this Numa. Do you think it'd attack me if I let you out? That's a good question. Hey, why don't you give it a poke? See if it retaliates. Spinner made a strangled noise like a choking cat. No way. Are you crazy? I'm not a coward, but I'm not an idiot either. I won't pick a one-on-one fight with a Numa. Annoying, Izuku thought, sucking his lips to his teeth to keep from clicking his tongue in displeasure. I have no idea how this Numa's programmed. It's entirely possible it won't attack anyone tagged as an ally. Spinner could easily kill it in that case, without any danger to himself. If I'm wrong, I could just reset. Of course, I can't tell Spinner that. Unless, he tapped his lip. He did present himself as a person with some type of precognitive ability, not even an hour ago. If he told Spinner he'd be safe fighting the Numa and just go for it, would he listen? Maybe I could provoke the Numa from inside the cell and trick it into destroying the door for me. But that would make a ton of noise, and I'd have to disable the Numa after that. At least I wouldn't break myself getting out of my cell. Don't worry about it, Izuku said, snapping his fingers and giving Spinner a curt bob of his head. The Numa's instruction is to keep me here, that's all. It won't attack an ally, so you'll be fine. Huh. Spinner peered up at the hulking monstrosity, looming several heads above him. Izuku could hear him swallow from here. Is sure? Because you didn't sound sure before. I'm sure. Do you think I'd ask this of you if I wasn't? I should definitely feel more guilty for this. Trust me. Spinner eyed the length of the Numa, from its bare feet to its exposed brain. The villain shifted his shoulders forward, arms hanging low. From the limited gap in the door, Izuku could only see so much, but he assumed Spinner filled his hands with the many blades he'd hidden across his body. All right, Spinner announced, dubious. Here we go. He leapt, and where Izuku couldn't see, he heard a grunt, snapping and whirring, a scream cut off prematurely. Blood splattered the wall, before it was covered by a monstrous head. It leaned down to glance through the opening in the door. A purple helmet covered half its face, eyes hidden under a viridian pane of glass. Its mouth gaped open, saliva dripping over the uneven teeth as it groaned. Izuku winced, looked away. So that's a no. I don't have the keys for the door, Spinner admitted, tapping his foot against the metal gate. Izuku hummed. Maybe I should try tricking the Numa after all. I'm just afraid that as soon as we start making too much noise, Tokoemi and Bakugo will be in trouble. Then again, even if Spinner finds the key for the door, won't the result be the same? We'll have to fight the Numa either way, unless the thing is stupid enough that it doesn't register the door being unlocked as an escape attempt, which is entirely possible. If I had to guess, I'd say Shigaraki keeps the keys to every door in this place either on him, or in his room. Or any place he's got easy access to, really, without giving anyone else access. Can you think of any places like that? Spinner rubbed his chin. Maybe. He didn't start moving right away, and Izuku gestured with his hands impatiently. Well, what are you waiting for, Dabi? I told him I'd guard you, and if he sees I've abandoned my post, he'll be pissed. Play dumb. Tell him you got bored and figured the Numa provided enough protection. He'll be annoyed, sure, But it's not like you're planning to stick with these guys for much longer, are you? Point. He tapped the side of his head. You're a smart kid. You'll be a good hero. Izuku was surprised at the tug of guilt those words brought forth. He wasn't a fool. Even if Spinner was his temporary ally, that didn't make up for or erase all the bad things he'd done. Or would do, once their alliance was over. Still, sorry for getting you killed, he thought. But I value my classmates' lives more than I do yours. Whether he felt guilty or not, he wouldn't let that stop him from doing what needed to be done. Spinner left to search for the elusive key, closing the slab over the hole, peeking into the cell as he did. Izuku, for want of nothing better to do, continued to practice Black Whip. The villains had stripped him of all possessions excluding the clothes on his back, so with no watch to keep track of time, he counted the seconds manually. When he reached the thousands, he grew worried. Should it take this long, or did Spinner get himself in trouble? Shit, how long do I wait until I reset? A voice approached from the outside. Loud, grating, angry. The words were a mix of curses and complaints, and it didn't take long to guess who. Shigaraki, fuck. Alright. I get it. It was stupid of me to entrust him with the kid. Won't happen again, boss. A second voice joined the other, droning monotonously and dripping with sarcasm at the last word. Dobby, you're lucky I'm even giving you a second chance, Frankenfreak. I should just... Shigaraki growled. He stopped outside Izuku's cell, metal slots slamming open. His red eyes practically glowed with hostility. Think you're clever, huh? He rasped out. Kirigiri. Something dropped behind Izuku, a noise consisting of the clatter of metal and something softer. He could already guess what it was, but he needed to confirm. Haltingly, he turned his head. He caught the black dot of Kurigiri's warp portal before it winked out of existence, and with a sense of dread, he turned his eyes to the floor. Spinner lay in an unceremonious heap, his knives spread around him like a steel crown from where they spilled out of their sheaths. One of his arms were missing, along with half his head, giving Izuku a clear view of the contents inside. His skull formed a bowl that caught the small portion of his brain that still remained, most having spilled out from earlier. Some of his scales were bent backwards, others removed completely, revealing red muscle beneath, like a fish that had been scaled. Izuku's mouth moved, but didn't make a sound. Sorry, when did you catch him? He asked, eyes never leaving the still form. You think I'd tell you? Shigaraki scoffed. No, I'll just leave you to ponder that question until you die. Damn bastard. I don't care what Sensei says, I'm going to kill. Izuku blinked, changing his focus from Spinner to Shigaraki. He regarded the man as he raised his hands, moving them to his throat. He crushed, tearing the skin and arteries out in a fountain of gore. A few drops of blood managed to reach through the gap in the door and landed on Shigaraki's cheek, and the man leapt back in surprise. What the fuck? Izuku smiled. He made a wheezing sound, red liquid bubbling over his lips in his obscure attempt at laughter. Shigaraki looked positively perturbed. Never gets old, Izuku thought, before dropping to the floor with the grace of a dead spinner. You're a smart kid. You'll be a good hero. Izuku smiled sardonically. He wondered if Spinner, if Stain, if All Might or his mom, if any of his friends would think the same of if they knew everything he knew. Spinner made to leave, but Izuku stopped him. Wait, he called out. Spinner observed him curiosity. Where are you planning to look first? I'll start with Shigaraki's room, then move on from there. Sure, hoping he's not keeping the keys on him, or we're in trouble. Izuku thought their options through. He knew Spinner would run afoul of something, and soon, but he didn't know if it started in Shigaraki's room or elsewhere. The blind leading the blind. Why don't you wait with that? Izuku suggested. If Shigaraki sees you rooting through his personal belongings, I'm sure he'd kill you, no matter what shoddy excuse you come up with. Start safe as you can, before you crank up the danger factor. Okay? I'm not completely useless, you know. Spinner straightened his back, lifted his chin, and jabbed his thumb into his chest. Stealth is my forte, actually. You might have guessed it already, but my quirk lets me stick to walls and ceilings like a lizard. You'd be seriously surprised at how rarely people look up. That's great, but seriously, don't get seen. I'm not calling you weak, but do you honestly think you'd survive a fight against the whole league without backup? Spinner deflated. No. Good. Izuku nodded. Be careful, don't take stupid risks. Stay hidden, stay alive. And, It sounded stupid, but he said it anyways. Make Stain proud? He cringed inwardly. Speaking it aloud was even worse than just thinking it, but Spinner's eyes lit up with a spark of determination, which is exactly what Izuku hoped for. He thinks. Maybe he doesn't want Spinner to be too determined, or he might take those stupid risks Izuku warned him against. Guess I'm about to find out. Understood. Spinner saluted. Wistfully, he added. A new age of heroes, a new world. His eyes briefly dimmed over, lost in some fantasy, before he slapped his cheek slightly and brought himself back. His eyes hardened, taking on a more serious edge. He didn't close the slot this time, and Izuku saw him stride away with more purpose than before. He disappeared from view, and Izuku was forced to sit as his legs started to shake. Anxiousness wormed its way into his guts. There was fear that his plan would fail, that his grain of hope proved useless, and shame. The shame of knowingly sending a man to his very possible death, albeit a temporary one. Why does it feel worse every time I do it? It wasn't so bad the first time. It's like I'm playing with human lives like they're pieces on a chessboard. He stared down at his hands, fingers splayed open, palms up. I've killed before, he thought. He flexed the muscles, watching as the pale and jagged scars stretched taut over the scraped skin. I did it, with these hands. It was desperation the first time, almost an accident, but after, he remembered Mr. Compress' mask shattering like glass, plastic shards digging into his knuckles. The skull followed shortly after. He remembered disemboweling Shigaraki with his nails alone, remembered crushing the one solid piece of Kurogiri's body that kept him alive, remembered tearing Magna's head off of her shoulders and crushing it flat between his palms. It had been in the heat of the moment, passionate anger pushing him to commit acts a sane Izuku never would. He supposed that was the difference from then to here. He hated Spinner, sure, but he wasn't particularly angry at him. Not at the moment. If anything, he was a bit grateful, because the man provided him a step forward. It had been in the heat of the moment, but in that moment, he'd enjoyed it. He'd taken notice of it, the sick pleasure he felt at hurting the ones who hurt him and his friends, but put off analyzing those feelings for later. He had more important matters to attend to, he told himself, but he also knew he didn't want to think about it. But that piece of guilt, as he sent Spinner off with his corpse still fresh on his mind, it reminded him of why he wanted to be a hero in the first place. He wanted to save people, to be like All Might. A paragon of hope, pure goodness, without any selfish motivations other than the personal desire to see people smile. Hero, civilian, villain, it wouldn't matter, because everyone deserved to feel safe and happy. I'm not like All Might, he realized. The shock was like a physical blow, and his heart stuttered. I can't be like All Might. I can't. Oh God, I messed up. I completely fucked up. Since the moment I killed Stain, I ruined it completely. Everything I was supposed to be, fuck. He could tear his hair out. He wanted to, but settled for digging his fingers into the wound on his cheek, digging until blood ran down his throat. He messed up. Completely fucked up beyond saving. Screw second chances, he had that, and he'd repeatedly done the same thing over and over again. Because he was angry, because he felt robbed, because he thought he was justified, and it's not like anyone but him would know the truth. But did that really make it okay? This was part of him now, a smudge that couldn't be wiped clean. The mark, the stain of a killer. He could push the blame on the villains all he liked, but in the end, he made the choice. He really was fucked up, because despite acknowledging his wretched actions, despite his regret, it was regret for all the wrong reasons. Regret for not living up to All Might's expectations. No, his own expectations. Regret because he'd never be able to fulfill his dream. Regret because Izuku wasn't who he thought he was. He didn't regret what he did because it was wrong, he regretted it because of how it affected him. Arrogant. Selfish. Was this how he'd always been? Or was this where he'd been pushed? He thought back to the lives he'd taken, and he thought they deserved it. He pushed himself to his knees, crawled over to the grate, and emptied the contents of his stomach down the drain. 4 tries. The keychain jingled as Spinner switched between his options. The click and creak of the door swinging open announced his success. Spinner jumped up on the ceiling, but the Numu didn't so much as twitch. He breathed out a sigh, dropping back down. They were in his room after all. Spinner said. But I did as you said. I was careful, and I'm sure no one saw me. We shouldn't dilly-dally though. I think Shigaraki wants to check on you soon. Now that the door was open, he had a better vision of the hero's student. He gave Izuku a once-over, brow raising. What happened to you? You look terrible. I'm fine, Izuku said, not caring enough to explain himself. He was still inside the cell, and he glanced over at the Numa just visible outside. So, moment of truth. Spinner cleared a good distance between the door and the monster. Yeah? I'll just stand, all the way over here. He shuffled up a wall, looking like a cat with its tail raised, ready to either strike or skitter away at the drop of a hat. Go ahead, he said. Izuku did. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey today. I hope you enjoyed exploring the fascinating what-if scenario of Deku. The possibilities were truly mind-blowing. If you found this video entertaining, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to me and inspires me to bring you more captivating content in the future. Stay tuned for more exciting what-if stories and other amazing videos coming your way. Until next time, take care, stay curious.